Hello everyone, the last session before the lunch break. Welcome to the third Science to Services session focusing on Europe this day. My name is Jelmer Jering from Norway, and together with Machiel from Wageningen University in the Netherlands, I am chairing this session. We have three guests to discuss several challenges and topics with you today, and to get some clearance on different perspectives on barriers and opportunities to how to optimize this WWIC information in different value chains in the European Arctic context. So we have Thomas Begglid in the middle, and we have Jorn Kirstiansen, who just stayed on the stage. He is well introduced, and Til Rasmussen from the Danish Meteorological Institute. So just a brief introduction of the the three guests before we continue with the different topics. Thomas is a chief officer who works at Den Pilot, and he started his on a coastal tanker in Greenland, supplying different cities and settlements, promoted to a captain, so has a lot of maritime experience, and licensed as a pilot in 2005. So he is in the capacity of Den Pilot, representing a lot of actual operational experience here in the Arctic. Then we have Jorn. I think most importantly that next to being director of Development Center at Norway and PPP steering group member and part of EC Force, he is clearly an advocate of Science for Services philosophy. And this is definitely something, you mentioned it as well already, Jorn. You have some more comments to give and questions to discuss during this session. And then we have Til, and he is a researcher at DMI Denmark, working on development of operational ocean and sea ice forecast systems, and very much engaged in projects in Greenland and having a lot of contact with different communities in Greenland. And also a member of the job task team, of course, on sea ice prediction and verification. So welcome to you all three. So, but let's start off here with a video, a time lapse that Thomas is happy to share with all of you, and it is without sound. So Thomas is going to give some comments along the way. It lasts a couple of minutes, I understand. So I'll just, whenever you're ready, click on play, and off we go.
Yeah, everybody hear me? Yeah. It's been, I'll just stop for a second. I'll just introduce a little bit.
I'm not sure if I can stop it.
Okay, I'll just continue anyway. Okay, just say Den Pilot Greenland is a Greenland company. It's owned by the Danish state pilot provider, Den Pilot. We are currently 24 pilots with more than 400 years of experience navigating polar waters in Greenland. The service was founded in 2016 due to a growing concern that cruise ships in Greenland is a high-risk activity. Navigation in polar waters are regulated by the Polar Code. The code is risk-based, and that means all activities have to be based on assessment of applicable risk. And one size does not fit all. It has to be, when you do the assessment, it has to be the actual ship, the area, the time of the year, and the ice condition expected. That will be the basis of the assessment. Back in 2016 when it started, we had to develop a cooperation. So for us to secure the best possible information for the assessment on board, we have a long working collaboration with DMI and the Greenland Ice Service. Unfortunately, the publicly available information is not good enough. It's not covering our needs. It's good, but we have another expectation. We want to be very sure we have the right data all the time. So we have had a tailored service since 2016. Every year in the early spring, we discuss the upcoming season with our main contact in the ice service. And the service delivered is tailor-made to each vessel during the season. That means about 3 days before the ships are arriving in a certain area, the production will start up. Because one picture will not give you the full picture. It will not give you the full information flow you need. So we need a couple of days to see the trend in the ice. Did you stop it, or did it just?
I managed to stop it.
Oh, you managed to stop it. Okay, that's not a bad place. I'll just get back to that. I'll just briefly say what kind of products we receive for this kind of passage. First of all, we have something called Auto Quick Look. It's SAR images basically, and it's based on Sentinel-1, but that's not enough to fill the gaps in the time. We use commercial satellite data or DMIs. Purchasing satellite data. That could be Cosmos SkyMed, TerraSAR, and so on. We will have in this area, because basically all the ships will pass through this area during the cruising. So we have daily coverage of this area, so we can watch, we can see the trends, we can observe the icebergs, for example, floating back and forth in the passage. As I said, it's an automated product. It's predefined areas. The resolution has been set at 10 meters, and in small areas that will give us acceptable file size. For example, the whole passage you see here will take 2 minutes in a time lapse, will take normally about 8 hours. It's covered by 4 satellite images. The other thing we'll get is an outlook. That's not automated, that's the ice service, the ice specialist, giving us a forecast 24 hours, up to 48 hours ahead for the expected ice conditions and wind conditions. The last couple of years, we have worked with DMI to establish a system of warning for katabatic winds in this area. As you see when Jelmer is starting in, there's some very narrow passage, and there's some valleys coming down from the ice cap, and it's known to have crosswinds. The ship you see here is 290 feet, 95 meters long, and that's a huge windage area. So crosswinds, when approaching the narrow, is very vital. We need to know if there's increased risk of that. And just to make it clear, we will not use windy.com for that. Absolutely not. No, and the thing is, DMI have some selected places in Greenland that have a sub-kilometer model on demand, and so we can sort of, or the Met Office, they can tap into that model and give us a warning if they see anything, if they see crosswinds in the area. I think we can start again. Just when Jelmer is starting, in a few seconds on the left side of the ship, you'll see an iceberg, and that iceberg floated around in more or less in that position for 2 weeks in 2019. Yeah, and just on a ship like this, we have 3,000 passengers on board and about 1,000 crew members. We have 2 pilots on board all the time. That means there will be a pilot available to assist the captain at any time during the day or night. And as you can see now, we are just basically just ahead. We are approaching an iceberg. It's not really a big concern in the position it's, but you can see the ship have to turn quite a lot just before the narrow strait. And if that iceberg would have drifted in and would be in position where we are now, it would have been extremely difficult to pass. And that means we need to have very precise information about the ice inside, because we have to do an assessment if we want to go in, if we want to go through, or if we have to stay outside.
What time of the year is this?
This is early August. So all the ice you see here is not sea ice, it's glacial ice. It's from the small glaciers inside, and the icebergs is from probably somewhere on the east coast. Here on your right, you will see, that's a little bit hard to see, there's a small village, only about 80 people living in here. So we have a lot of these small settlements around the coast. We will not visit, we will flood a village like this with 3,000 passengers. It's called Prince Christian Sound. So it's like a passage in southern Greenland, and it's convenient for the cruise ships. Let's say normally on Saturday morning I'll be back on a cruise ship in Reykjavik, and so on Monday morning I'll go through here and to Qaqortoq in southern Greenland, and then come back down to Newfoundland. So that's a normal route for us.
And you've been on board while this is being recorded?
I wasn't on board on this particular one. I've been on board a similar vessel this year.
Well, I think this is really showing, a lived example of how challenging it is to navigate.
I mean, I hope you can see it. It's what we're looking for. We're looking for very small pieces of ice, because these ships are not designed for ice navigation, basically. So we will not be touching any ice with these. And the other thing, I just wanted to show the beautiful part of Greenland.
Definitely. Okay, let's continue. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Thomas. So I give the floor to Machiel, and we have some input from Jorn, from Thomas, and later on also from Til, to discuss user challenges. And I think we start with Thomas to give some input there. So, Machiel.
Yeah, like just as a way of starting, I would like to say how grateful we are that Thomas is here. It hasn't been an easy, let's say, job to get him here, because we are like right in the middle of the most intense, let's say, part of this season. So we are actually very happy about that. We had to also convince the WMO to make some special travel arrangements to make this possible. You know that is sometimes not the easiest thing to do. So, and well, we are, I think, and that's at least that's what I think. You are willing, let's say, to be here because we have established this long-term relationship as part of a research project dedicated to user interests. And I mean, like Thomas, that's from my side has been one of the most committed, let's say, users in that group. Let's say he has always been responsive, attending all the workshops, doing all the crazy things that we had planned, basically. And this is the next crazy thing, you could say, we have for him. So you see, well, this picture you've seen before, also in Thomas Jung's presentation. It's about, well, user challenges, basically. And maybe a first question that we have for you, Thomas, is like, if you could, maybe tell us, like where do you see yourself in this figure? Is that a question you could answer?
To say, I would say I'm in this picture a couple of times. Yeah. I'm also pushing some of the data uphill, but a lot of my work is on let's say on the loading dock side and making sure my pilots are not overwhelmed with data. I just checked this morning. I just told a little bit about the kind of products we're getting. I just checked this morning. We have just reached 2,000 emails with ICE information this season. So there's a huge job for us to make sure our pilots are not overwhelmed with this kind of data. So we're trying to make it simple and make it relevant and time it so they will have the right information when they need it. So I think we talked about it earlier. I was like an intermediate user because I'm using it, but also have to make sure my end users, the pilots and the captains, understand the products. Because during the off-season, I can have some good talks with Kirstiansen at the Ice Service, but I still have to explain what we see and what we're getting to my pilots and the captains in the end.
Yeah. And what then from that position, as you say, several positions, like what do you see as the key challenges with regards to developing more tailored services or the use of services that are out there?
Let's see, if I have to take the position of my pilots, they don't want too much. they want it to be timely. So one of my, as I say, one of my greatest jobs or most important jobs is to make sure it's relevant and as I say, timely. That will be my main job as a part of the management.
Yeah. No. Maybe we could ask one of the two. I think Jorn first was the idea. One of the two Met services, let's say representatives here. Like, how do you relate to these, let's say, to these things, or where do you think the key challenges are, and in relation to what Thomas has just said?
Well, first of all, I think it depends on what type of data or use. I mean, sometimes they're pushing it up, and sometimes it's quite efficient, as I said, thanks to Øystein and his work. Other times we're users of external data, but also our own data. So I mean, we discuss internally. So I sometimes compare this sort of data flow and data management, that the goal is to make everyone equally unhappy, because it's very difficult to find solutions that cater for all. Bottleneck, I mean, I guess part of the issue is that there is so much data.
Yeah.
And another is that, people get fond of their tools, their way to do it.
Yeah.
Some like the data to come in the format all they've come, because that's easier. They can use the script as they did before.
Yeah. Like
So
there are so many different needs, as we hear over the last couple of days as well. So what kind of challenge does that give you as a Met service? Is it an unsurmountable, well, let's say mountain, right? Or is it? How do you deal with that?
I think one of the challenges is that we need to invest some resources also in doing this in order to be doing good science. I mean, I mentioned in my presentation that we have a good collaboration with Harald University Bergen, but and that requires some effort from us also. So because we can't expect Harald and another PhD student to be able to do everything on their own on the model, but it also goes on data analysis. We're quite pragmatic at Met Norway, so Roar, do not listen now. But we have students, we quite easily give them guest accounts, for instance, so they can go and work together with us in our systems. They have to sign things and stuff, so it's not a big issue. But that is basically because that's the easiest way. It's not sort of sustainable, I think, or scalable.
Yeah.
But biggest challenge is that I think it comes down to resources. That a common understanding, we need to invest some time in order to discuss better. And Øystein illustrated very well that with this reference to 2006, Øystein, it takes a long time. And yeah, I can perhaps my colleagues in Denmark have something to add.
Yes, so this case with Dan pilots is also a little bit special. And we have others. So some of the bigger cruise lines, they have funding to also accommodate for this communication, and that helps. We've also heard stories about going to the small communities where it's harder to. First of all, Greenland is a big country. I think there's 50,000 people or so, and a lot of small coastal communities with different challenges. And it's hard to come out and set up individual system for each of all of these. So that's one thing. The other thing is to narrow down what is it exactly that Thomas wants. And as it was said with the local communities earlier on this week, it's communication. That's the way forward. Also, so we know we speak the same language. It can even be within our own organization, where we typically have had a chain that Thomas also mentioned through the Ice Service, and they communicated. But projects such as the Sailing Seas, where I think that Machiel and Jelmer and Begglid, who's not here, did a huge job in accommodating these discussions. Has helped along, and it makes it easier when you put a face on a person to call them or say, okay, this could be of interest. And then Thomas might say, nah. but that's okay. I mean, then he say, okay, maybe if this is better. If this, I mean, it's just easier to when you first have established the contact to.
I think Jorn wants to respond.
It says tailoring, and you mentioned it also, and that is a challenge. And I think that was also a question that Øystein got after his presentation. I mean, how far should we, as Met Services or others, go in terms of tailoring? For instance, these things Øystein showed with the thread server, should we also have code on top of it for the users to extract individual data sets, for instance? Perhaps you should, in some cases, have a code or a repository where the community can develop and plug and play on top of it. But in other cases, perhaps it's the private sector who should do it. So we have examples. We've gone advocated because we have a very well-functioning open data policy and service. But we have advocated for this is very valuable, for instance, for the hydropower companies in Norway. Most of them make a lot of money, even especially now, but they don't have that many IT experts. So they pool the resources, went to a private company, they set up sort of a solution on top of our web service. They fetch the data, do something very good with it, and tailor it for the respective hydropower producers. I think that's a good solution. But because if we go too far into tailoring, we have so many customers, it's quite important, impossible to maintain all of them in a good way. Yeah. And I also think that we, as a Met Services, we are publicly funded, we also should cater or facilitate the way for private sector to make solutions on top of our data.
Yeah, thanks. Like another one of these solutions that are also, let's say, asked here in the next slide are also about special relations, right? And maybe Thomas, maybe you can relate to that. Like you mentioned already that you have like a long-term relationship with, in this case, DMI, as a client, as a customer of DMI. There are several other customers there, and this creates, of course, it could be part of the solution, to have this longer-term, institutionalized relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very beneficial to us. Basically, if I need to send a ship to some remote area during the winter, I'll just ask Kel. I'll just call him up and say, we have a ship going there, it's just going in 2 weeks, and just give me what I need. And that's basically, he know what he have, what kind of products he have in portfolio, and he can tailor it to me and give me a quote, and then just accept it basically because they're fairly good prices. But still, we are a paying customer to institution, and I guess not all weather services have the same customers, and that gives a little bit special. It's a long term, but also we will put the money up as well, saying, okay, we need you to invest some time. We need you to, let's say, purchase the commercial satellite images we need. So we're lucky ones. We're the lucky ones because we got the money to get what we need. The problem is that we know what we can get, but the public, let's say, all the other operators, they don't know what they can get because they haven't gone into this kind of collaboration. So that's a problem. A lot of operators, let's say, in the Arctic, they don't know what they can get. We know because we've been, let's say, maybe not co-producing, but we've been pushing the data up, let's say, or we want this automated product. I think there's a gap between, let's say, a company like my own, where we can say we will spend money because this is essential to what we do, and to other, let's say, users in the Arctic, let's say the local communities where they have to rely on what's been funded by the government, basically. That's a huge challenge, I see.
I know as an intermediary, you were also commenting like this week how you have to sometimes tell people, let's say, not to use Windy, right? You were quite insistent on that.
Yeah. That's one of my small things when I talk to my pilots and they say Windy, I go like, no. no, we have to admit, everybody uses windy. I mean, don't be shy, come on. I say, during the ocean passes, when you're coming from Iceland, coming down to Greenland, use whatever. And one of the things about wind, you have to admit, they're bloody good at making a friendly user face that will work on a low bandwidth. I mean, just saying, just give you something to work on, yeah? So just comparing to DMI, it's not, we're not just happy with everything that comes out of DMI. Their webpage is not very good, not very friendly on that kind of, but we have to say, once we come to the coast of Greenland, we have to use a better model. That's for sure. I don't want my partners to use Windy when they go into transcription, so now get like, yeah. It's not good. I don't like it.
Till or no? Would you like to?
Can I briefly follow up on that? I'm sure you have an answer on this as well, because it applies to how you work together. Because we heard throughout the days and also here in this discussion the importance of institutional relationships and support, etc., to really build something that is a valuable service. At the same time, you see in different contexts that one-on-one interactions, like a trusted forecaster. We saw Rick yesterday mentioning and annotated satellite images as something that is essential and incredibly valuable for communities, which is done by perhaps only one person. So these kind of contacts and interactions, perhaps they work for you. I think in Greenland there's something done, put on Facebook. What is the role of those kind of relationships for making successful services? And it also directly pertains to this question. You said, Thomas, you are one of the lucky ones. How to create an inclusive way of creating services that are tailored and not leaving out those who are potentially less privileged to be able to to build these kind of relationships.
Okay. Yes. So what we can use the relationship to then pilot to is to make similar services, maybe not as predefined. We can't download all the commercial satellites for everyone, but for instance, publishing we have published satellite images around Greenland, and if there's certain interest from someone, we also do annotated quick looks in special cases. So it's I think it's about taking the knowledge we have from existing connections, and it's not just then pilots, there's also others, and try to expand that to something we can do in an automated and a way where we don't need a lot of people to sit and work on it, because that's what the limitation is sometimes, that if we can do the development based on funds like Sailing Seas, like other projects, like Jorn mentioned, and then continue the service after that, then that's the ideal way.
For our case, I would say it's been really inspiring to be here and listen to all of these good presentations and all the great work you've been doing here in Canada, Gita and all that. I mean, this is really inspiring. I've been talking also to Roar with this, and it's really an example we should follow, because we do not know our users in the Arctic or north of the Polar Circle that well. I had one slide where I referred to Tromsø. I have the feeling that the role of meteorologists has not been discussed that much here. I think it needs to change. It needs to be more specialist and less generalist. We need to use automation where it's possible to free up resources to work directly with the users, to sit on the lap of the users, to leave the office, to go out and sit next to the users. We need to do that much more. Do we need to be on radio and say, tomorrow it's going to be sunny and in the afternoon it's going to be rain? It's a lot of resources to go to this. You have to prepare, you have to be in the studio. I know it's nice to listen to in the morning coffee, but perhaps it's a better use of resources to go out and be with the most relevant users, because they give so much valuable feedback that benefits all. So I think we also need to think about a bit of the changing role of the meteorologists and the forecasters in all this. And collaboration is not only along the value chain, but also between each other. And again, also, I mean, the thing you've been doing here in Canada is super good. I mean, yeah. And we have only one Jelmer, so again, there's no one position at Norway.
Yeah, a comment to that as well. Definitely look at that position, but also interacting with users is not only a social science activity, it's definitely also a role for the physical scientists and for the operational forecasters, for example. So we're in this together, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, we have reached almost our time, but yeah, we wanted to also, if there are questions, and maybe there are from the audience, give an opportunity to ask to any one of these people here. I already saw a hand right there, yeah.
Yes, I'd like to pick up on that last point, because at University of Bergen, of course, we educate meteorologists and oceanographers, and our education is evolving. A couple of years ago, we introduced value chain as a terminology, right? This wasn't something we talked about before. What do you think is missing in the people that you hire, and what will they need to be useful in the value chain context that they don't have?
It's a question for?
I guess Jorn started the discussion.
Well, it's basically not so much directed to me, but more to my colleague who's not here, directed for the forecast department. The leader of Tromsø was supposed to be here, but she got COVID before she entered the plane. So she was much better to answer. I can only speculate. But I'm really happy with what you say, and perhaps we should focus more on the education, also bringing in what Jelmer said, also the social science aspects. Yeah, I don't have a good answer, sorry, Harald, but perhaps.
Jeff?
No.
Oh, sorry, there was maybe, yeah, you want to?
I mean, typically when meteorologists come in, they're relatively new, and I mean that's part of the game. So if they can come out and see some of the things, and maybe, like you say, talk to people, I think that's the only way, and of course learn from their colleagues who has been out. And but it's yeah. Otherwise, they would sit in an office and look at the number of forecasts and whatever information they have, and I don't think that will make them smarter on particular issues in particular places that might be. So do some sort of interaction with users, and yeah, I think that's the only way. Basically, get some experience.
It is already time, but you have a very quick question, Jeff?
Yeah, for Thomas, talking with Machiel and some of the others in the PPP CIRA team, there have been strong comments coming back that if we can improve the products and services, then one of the other things to take into account is the environment, particularly on the ships, where there's not space to put another system, a dedicated system. So how do you see these new products and services being delivered into the system and used in the workflow on the system, and the officers on the ships being trained to use them? So, I mean, we could talk for a long time on that, but just any brief observation or caveats for us?
Yeah, our experience is basically keep it to email. We've been in different workshops we've been talking about, could we get an app, could we get a service where we would get what we wanted? We have chosen to say we want an email-based service. We have talked a lot about what size of files would we like. That's also why I mentioned earlier we cut the sprint question sound into 4 areas, 4 pictures. That meaning we'll have 4 small, relatively small in megabyte size files coming in, and that's basically on a low bandwidth system. That is, to our knowledge, the best way to do it. We had a lot of discussion a couple of years ago with the serious patrol. They're patrolling the northeast Greenland on dog sleds. And so they say, oh, can we have an app? So really, do we want an app on a Iridium? So no, they stick to email. So that's an easy system. It can be delivered anywhere. Everybody can open a PDF file. And you mentioned to teach on board. That's another big part of the job as a pilot. We have to be an integral part of the bridge team where many times are very, let's say there's a lack of knowledge. So we will fill a gap on the bridge to be the experts. We have a saying. We talk about risk assessment. We, like everybody else, talking about risk assessment. We have a let's say a traffic light. So we have a saying. It's okay that the pilots are green, drinking coffee, everything is good, ice flying around. That's just normal business. But the Italian captain, who had never seen any ice except in a glass, he's red. He's flaming red. He don't know what to do. So one of the biggest challenges for us when we come on board is to bring us on the same level. Maybe we cannot bring him up to bright green, but we have to level out so he'll be happy and consent with what we're going to do. So before we start a passage like the one I showed, we have to be in the same level in the whole team on board. Oh, but that was an answer for you.
Well, thanks a lot, Thomas. There's a great final words. I think we can close this session. So I would like to thank our panelists a lot. The panelists who were already here, but of course also especially the one who came like during his season. So let's give a big hand and go for lunch.